Welcome to Reality of the Rose with your host, Natalie Sprink.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 204 of Reality of the Rose. I'm your host, Natalie Sprink. Glad to be with you guys. Happy daylight savings time change. I just say that because I'm recording this what seems like at 10 o'clock at night. However, it's like 10 till 5. So I don't know how come at my age I am not used to this change by now. I'm 54 years old. Do you think after 54 years of going through daylight savings time, when we lose an hour and it gets dark early, I would just like get used to that year after year? But no, I'm not. And it blows my mind that granted, I'm in northern Wisconsin, so it does get darker up here much earlier. But it literally is 4:54 p.m. and it is dark as can be outside right now. So yeah, and it's middle of November, so we still have time to go. Anyway, just had to mention that because this blows my mind. All right, so today it's just me. I'm going to be discussing Golden Bachelor and a little bit of Taylor Frankie Paul. I initially, because this past weekend, I watched the whole season 3 of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So I completely finished it, and I was going to talk about it as well on this particular episode, but then I thought, why cram it all into one when now that The Bachelor is over, I have plenty of time to cover Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and not make this a super long episode. Besides that, I have some thoughts on Golden Bachelor. So I'm going to focus on that today. And I guess I want to just start at the fact that I'm relieved that this season is finally over. Since it's over now, and based on the finale, I haven't recapped about Golden Bachelor for 3 weeks now. So I haven't recapped I didn't recap the Women Tell All. I didn't recap the Fantasy Suite episode. And obviously I didn't, this last week was the finale. So I'm just going to kind of lump that all together. I'm not even going to go over the Women Tell All because I actually didn't even watch it. I just saw clips on Instagram and TikTok and listened to other podcasts about it. And from what I can tell, I'm just kidding. I did watch it. What am I talking about? I did watch it. I wasn't going to, but then I had a little time and I did. Wow. Do you trust anything I say? But it was there wasn't much to report on, and tell-alls are always so hard to recap anyway. The one thing that I did take from it was I thought it was hilarious when they were showing, I can't remember if it was a blooper, if they were just showing, I think it was a behind the scenes kind of clip, and they were showing the girls. I think it was when Susan and Kathy were there with them, and I think they were like having each other like, hey, you act like so-and-so, when they were sort of mocking each other, but someone asked, it was Peg's turn, and she was supposed to mock Mel, and she did the Frankenstein walk that he does, and that I like laugh about and talk about all the time on the show. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious, especially now considering that she was the, what do you call it? Ring winner, I guess. She got the ring on her finger. I don't know what it means, but she's the last one standing. But I thought that was really funny. Other than that, I can't even remember anything noteworthy to talk about. But, and I'm not going to go, I've decided I'm not going to go play by play on the Fantasy Suites and the finale. I'm just going to give my general thoughts about certain parts of it. Okay, so let's start with, I guess let's just start with Cindy and sort of what she went through. So as we know, she had a daytime portion of the Fantasy Suite date. And then on and that consisted of her and Mel swimming with the stingrays. And I thought this was so, it gave me so much of the ick. I personally am wondering whether part of the reason that she left that night was not because it gave her the ick after that day. And I say that kind of jokingly, but I say that kind of serious because I can't recall exact words or the way he said it, but I know that he has definitely implied, especially early on in the season in like a get to know Mel kind of way, that he enjoys adventure. He enjoys like going out and staying active and staying busy, and I feel like I specifically remember him talking about having, this energy and being adventurous. And I don't know where the hell that Mel was. I did not see him on this show. If he exists, it's news to all of us. But it especially made me wonder after he was so hesitant to touch these stingrays and to even go close to Cindy during this whole activity. I just thought it was so wild. Even me, Tim and I took a trip where we got to swim with stingrays, and I get freaked out by that kind of thing. Typically, I usually don't like swimming with creatures and things. Maybe I've changed in my old age because we've done that before, and I've been more like Mel, but I've never claimed to be like this adventurous type. I've never claimed to be that way. I'm self-admittedly not the most adventurous type. But it was about 3 years ago we did this, and we also swam with sharks. We weren't supposed to touch the sharks; they were small sharks, but the stingrays we were encouraged to like pet them and hold them, and I did so. I held them. I was assured by the people they wouldn't sting me. Once I did it, it was so much fun. I loved it, and I am not the adventurous type. So to see Mel so hesitant, and not to like stingray swim shame. But I just was annoyed by that. I would have been irritated by that if I was Cindy. She was so understanding and uh accepting of him and encouraging of him. I feel like in her head she was going, what in the actual hell? She was, I think, being timid with like forcing him or urging him too hard to do it because of cameras, and because she didn't want to seem too forceful, and because she already had a little bit of hesitation about his feelings for her, so she didn't want to make it seem like she was like bullying him to do this. But I just thought it was fascinating that he finally did it. Okay, and he attributed himself doing it to Cindy and encouraging him, blah 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 blah, this whole Bachelor kind of jargon. But he, nevertheless, he did not, oh, excuse me, I knocked something. He did not want to do it. So okay, that was the first interesting thing to me. So they had that date. They apparently supposedly have fun the rest of the time. It was hard to tell. But so at the nighttime portion is when they sort of got into this little debate about her wanting to hear more from him about his idea on commitment at the end. And I felt like this was a real struggle for me because I shouldn't say real struggle, but there was a part of this where I actually saw both sides. And I want to mention this first because the other thing I'm going to talk about weighs heavier on me and I feel more strongly about. Mel would not give her a straight answer about where he stood post the show. She wanted some kind of commitment that he was in this for the long haul, I feel like. He kept like saying, I feel like this is just a process. This is just a step. No, I'm not prepared to get engaged at the end of this. He has said that before. He has said a couple times that he was just looking for someone to be with at the end of this, not necessarily to get engaged to. However, okay, so sorry, let me continue with this line of thinking. That part I respect because that's our big kind of criticism of the show, is that how many people can really get engaged after such a short period of time and after not knowing this person for that long. We know the success rate of this show in general with all of the different shows is not that high, blah, 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 blah. Right? We know that. However, um, and so since we have someone who is actually saying that, like, I'm not going to get engaged at the end of this, and I'm not going to like tell you I'm going to, because I'm not going to. Part of me has to respect that. Um, he also kept stressing about how, like the fantasy suite is kind of part of that, is having no cameras and getting to know each other on a different level from when the cameras are in front of them. Um, Pushing this narrative of needing to go to the fantasy suites. Um, I get that that's all true. I get this is a process. And so he is kind of, in a way, he is kind of saying, I believe in this process, but I believe you have to go through every step of this process and not do the fantasy suites, because that's a critical part of this, is getting to know each other when there's no cameras there. I agree with all that, and him committing to the fact that he's not going to get engaged is, I guess I respect the fact that he's just being honest about that and he's not trying to hide that. So that part I want to give him credit for, because he was at least being honest and he wasn't trying to sugarcoat it for her just to get her to continue to go on with the process, right? Okay, so the buck kind of stops there for me, though, because this is literally why you were asked to be on the show. Okay. I know that they have to ask him somewhere in this interview process whether he is willing to get engaged on this show. And that's the whole thing, right? They aren't asking you to actually marry the person. They're just asking you to get engaged. So, worst case scenario, as we've seen most of the time, is that they get engaged and the engagement just is broken off. Again, respect to him if he's like, that seems silly to me. Why not get to know each other further? Okay, that's fine. But then don't go on the show to find love, because it feels sort of like a scam when you're just being like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll go on The Bachelor. I'll be the Golden Bachelor. But I have absolutely no intentions of actually getting engaged on this show because it's too quick. Because I feel like this is the premise of The Bachelor. That's what The Bachelor is. If you want to go on some kind of a dating show where you could find a partner that you just want to date, I'm sure there's other way. Go on a dating app, find a different show to be on. But I do not understand why they cast him for the show if he had any kind of indication that he had no intentions of getting engaged. Like Cindy pointed out when they were on the dock having their little talk, there's a wedding ring literally in the logo of The Bachelor at all the Bachelors. And all of the women go on the show for that purpose, thinking that they couldn't get engaged at the end, because that is what the show is about. As crazy as it sounds, that's what The Bachelor is. It just is. That's how come every single season we have people getting down on one knee and getting engaged, because we have Neil Lane presenting them with the rings. We have all of that. It is just part of the show. And if you're going to cast someone who's not willing to do that, it's wild to me. Okay. Not to mention the fact that Mel is about the most boring person on the face of this earth to watch on TV. And I also stand by that alone, irregardless of the engagement part at the end or not. I can't imagine that he was super charismatic when they interviewed him to be the lead, because if that is the case, then it is literally a night and day situation here, right? I thought he showed the same sort of boring self on that, like after the rose ceremony when he was with both Peg and when he had his talk with Cindy. I have watched some of Peg's stories now that they are together, and He's no different. And it's so funny because it's definitely like old people stories, like she had a story of at her house. I assume it's her house and him meeting her dog. And, she just videos the whole time. It's not edited at all. She's like, oh, you're meeting Boo Boo now, or whatever the hell her dog's name is. And, oh, yeah, okay. Then he throws the ball and he comes back. And then she's like, so what do you think of him? And it's a real hard watch. It's a little cringy, but he is no different on these stories. He's just like, yeah, 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 he likes me, yeah, that's Mel. And I can't imagine that he's any different than that. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. I'm sure he's just, not like Mr. Super Personality. But and that's fine. But then why were you cast on the show? I don't know. It just is. I think that they made a horrible mistake in doing this because I think that it may be the demise of the Golden franchise, period. If there is going to be a Golden Bachelorette, it has to be Cindy, unless they do what they're doing with Taylor Frankie Paul and find some other golden woman that's more of like a standard mainstream celebrity type person to be the Golden Bachelorette, if they're going to continue with casting like they are with Taylor Frankie Paul. If not, it has to be Cindy. If not Cindy, I think they just have to not have the show anymore. I think the ratings were so horribly bad that there's probably not even but 3 people listening to this podcast of mine because no one's watching it. It's not being watched. And I think people that were watching it quit watching it because he was just so boring to watch. He didn't give us anything. I feel like at the beginning of the season, maybe he had his guard up a little bit because of the interview he did where he said he was going to kick off anybody that was under 60 or had fake hips or wigs. I think that maybe he was guarded in the things he was saying at the beginning of this. I thought that's maybe what it was, but that never changed, not up until the end. And again, if you were going to cast him and then after that interview happened, then cast somebody else. But anyway, with this finale, so, I think in the end, I don't really want to fault either one of them. They both, I side with Cindy. I am definitely more team Cindy on this whole thing because I agree with her that, because of everything I just said. And he indicated that his time frame of getting even engaged is like 2 years down the road. And I don't know. That felt weird to me too, because it always seems like when those of an older generation, find each other, it's typically a quicker path to that. If they think that they're, you know, um, compatible and they think that they're a match, the path to marriage or engagement or whatever the case may be is quicker just because they're later in life. Um, Saying that you don't even want to get engaged for 2 years is also wild to me. Again, why did you come on this show then if that's literally the path that you want to take? It was funny because Jesse even kind of quizzed him about that whole thing later and said, when he said about the getting engaged thing, and Jesse goes, well, that probably most of these women came on the show thinking that was the end, is to get engaged. And he was like, well, not all of them. Not all of them. It wasn't all of them. This is old man Mel talking. How's that for an impression? It wasn't all of them. Okay. Okay, Mel. What? What are you trying to do? Like one up Jesse Palmer? What was that response? It felt like he got so defensive whenever anybody questioned him about the getting engaged part, that he was like trying to argue that, why are you making me do this? Because it's The Bachelor. So I don't know what he meant by that. Maybe Nicole, because we know that she wasn't in it to get engaged. Like, who cares? But it's just so weird how he handled all of this. It just was, it was just so hard to watch. And I just think every time he opened his mouth and tried to prove his point about not wanting to get engaged, that it was just like a strike against the Bachelor franchise over and over and over again. Um, but okay, so fine. Like if Cindy is like, I need more of a commitment than this. I want a man who is going to like, can't live without me and lightning strikes and they just, they can't do without me. I totally get that. She totally deserves that. That's what she should have. Um, I don't know that The Bachelor brings that in any instance or in very few instances, but nevertheless, at this point, I think that she was icked out and that she saw that he absolutely had no intention of a deep commitment, and that's what she wanted. So she has every right to leave and have that opinion, obviously. On the same hand, he also has every right that if she's expecting a commitment and he's not ready to give it, that he's not going to give it. And if he thinks that he kept saying that that's part of the process, is like the fantasy suites. Well, okay, so like to argue that point on both sides, I get that you are going to learn a lot about the person that maybe you didn't learn in front of the cameras. But if you haven't learned enough about that person in just the time you've spent with that person, one night of just talking about the your different perspectives on things, whatever, religion, politics, money, kids, moving, all of that, you're not going to solve that in what, a 12-hour period from the time you're in your fantasy suite till you have to leave. Like 12 hours isn't going to like flip a switch, right? I mean, I wouldn't think it is. If you can at least just tell her, yes, like I want to get engaged at some point, or I do feel strongly about you, then I don't blame her for leaving. Again, I can't help to think that she just got the ick and wanted to get the hell out of there. But so that's that. And I do think that in the end, then him picking Peg was definitely the way to go, because at least from what we saw, Peg was a lot more not open minded. That's not the right word. She was a lot more flexible with, I guess, how she saw them ending. I don't think she necessarily needed that commitment, because after Cindy left, oh, it was also funny because Jesse actually gave him a chance. He's like, Peg is still, I'm sorry, Cindy's still here. You can go talk to her. You can, if you want to try to talk her into going to the fantasy suites and explaining yourself more. Well, obviously he didn't do that, which tells me also he didn't feel it really either. But when he went and discussed it with Peg the next day, and and again, I have to give him credit because he was upfront with her, even though it took him like freaking forever to get to the point. He was honest with her about the fact that Cindy left because of his unwillingness to commit to a proposal. And they did have Peg. We didn't see her saying it with her lips, but we heard her saying off face that worried her a little bit, so who knows where they took that from. But when he was telling her about Cindy leaving, um, at this point, she wasn't at least willing in front of the cameras to say, well, wait a second, that kind of freaks me out too. You mean you aren't willing to get engaged after this? So it seemed to me that she was fine with that. So maybe she was also fine with just having a partner. Maybe they will never get engaged. I'm just going to call it here. They won't. They will not ever get engaged. I'm going to call that they're going to break up within, for sure, less than 6 months. I'll say by the time Bachelorette starts, Peg and Mel will be broken up. That's what I think. When she had her little visit with the boys, well, I guess let's back up. So, she was willing to hear him and was accepting of the reasons why Cindy left. And she seemed to understand and be supportive of that and him, and definitely willing to continue to go forward with it. So then that's when she meets his boys as well as this friend of his. And I thought genuinely that felt like it went good. It seems like Peg is a person that can pretty much get along with anybody. She is so high energy. That's one of the reasons I think that they are not going to make it, because as much as he talks about like wanting to stay active and being adventurous and wanting to do all these things, I don't know, their energy levels are so completely different that I don't know how this is going to work, because she's like bouncing off the walls and, she's riding unicycles. And in the meantime, he's, give me my slip on shoes so I can scuttle over here and try to watch you do your unicycle. Like, I, he is, they're just, I don't know. They have not, they don't feel like a match to me. They just don't at all. But she seemed to get along really well with both the boys and the friend. She just seems so easy to talk to. Like, she seems like she'd be fun to be friends with. I love Peg. I just don't think it's going to last. She seems like her personality is leaps and bounds above his. And, I don't know, just don't see it working. But, if she's willing to give it a try, if she is willing to like just, so then we get to the, him asking her, I guess, to the proposal altar that we usually see. And we learn that he's giving her the ring as a promise to, on the path to become committed or something of that nature. Like, what? Like, just like put it in simple terms. Like, say this is a promise ring. Like, just say it how it is. This is not an engagement ring. It's a promise ring. I want us to continue to get to know each other. But how do you like designate this is a ring that we're going to promise each other, that we're going to try and get to know each other so that eventually we can just become committed, not become engaged, but just like show a commitment to each other. Wow. I was so confusing. So she gets a ring still, so I guess yay for Peg. But I also heard them on another podcast then afterwards. It was the Bachelor, what is that official Bachelor podcast called now? Whatever it is, the one that Grocery Store Joe and Serena host, whatever. Anyway, they interviewed them, and I mean, he will not commit to any kind of a promise of where they stand. He continues to just use the most vague language possible, like, they're just getting to know each other, they're on the path to, they're on the path to see if they want to commit to each other, and all of this vague jargon, which is just such a red flag to me. I just, this season, it was wild. So, I really did like how Cindy handled herself on after the final rose with him. They really kind of had the same debate as they had on the dock with him. It was like he was putting it all on her because she didn't finish the process of going to the fantasy suites. But I can also see where she wasn't sure, like, how did she know that he didn't just want to get her the fantasy suites to get a piece of ass? Like, seriously, like, how? Because especially the way he came off on, the infamous podcast before the show started. Like, how did she know that it wasn't like, I want to get you in the fantasy suites? Because also he can say it's to get to know you better, but I don't know. Again, if you're not willing to talk about some of these hard topics a little bit in front of the camera too, then why are you on the show? But I thought she handled herself just as she has this entire season. She just comes across as such a classy woman, so poised, so not willing to go down dirty and deep to just like get jabs at him. I just really love the way she handled herself. There was a very weird part. I don't know if you caught it, but it was toward the end of, it was at the very end of their conversation. And she was saying how they had even had a discussion about how she was willing to move to Orange County not to live together, but to like just move out there to be closer to him, and how she had told him she was willing to do that, and I had to rewind it like 5 times and turn the subtitles on to understand what he said. But he said something to the effect of, "Well, that wasn't going to work for me," or that's not what I wanted, or something to that effect. And he stopped, like when he said that, she stopped real short, like she wanted to say something, and just kind of looked at Jesse. I took it like, I'm done. Like I can't even with this guy anymore. But then after she looked at Jesse, they, like, you could tell there was a cut in the edit, and then they made applause, like this big round of applause. But it was so confusing to me because her looking at Jesse didn't warrant applause, really, and what he said, like, nothing in that conversation warranted an applause. It was so weird. I'm just going to say that it was just a mistake in editing somehow, because it was a really, really weird part of that segment. But anyway, clearly they weren't meant to be with each other, because they had just had different versions of how this show was, the show, and how this ending was going to come about. They looked at things completely different, as far as the whole issue of commitment. And she just, deserves something way better than Mel. So does Peg. Um, so I don't know. I don't know where this franchise goes from here. I guess another thing that I thought was kind of funny, just that I'll mention, is that whenever Cindy was on the couch by herself before Mel came out, I don't know how many different ways Jesse had to ask her basically if she regretted leaving when she did. Um, I mean, he asked her like 4 different ways. And I was like, Jessie, she doesn't. She's fine. Leave her alone and quit asking the question. Like, quit trying to force the narrative of like, oh, I wish I would have carried this process out till the end, or, follow the process, sort of like what Mel was trying to say. Like, she doesn't regret it. And even if she did, to be honest, she's never going to say that on this show. So I thought that was like so classic, you know, the show forcing Jesse Palmer to like drive that point home and to try to like keep with the narrative that the show likes to portray. I don't know. It was just very strange. I wonder what Cindy and Peg's relationship is right now. Um so yeah, I don't know. I guess as Mel Owens, I will continue to watch both their social medias to see how long this is actually going to last. Um God bless Peg. Another thing I wanted to talk about Bachelor related, though, too, was this controversy. If you have not heard about the whole thing with Gary from, the first Golden Bachelor coming out with this book, like a tell all, basically. And I think I talked about this a little bit on a previous episode, but he comes out with all of these disses against Teresa and why it didn't work. And he was pretty harsh on her. I didn't read the book, obviously. Where I learned more about it was from Teresa making an appearance on Dear Shandy. I'm also a big fan of the Dear Shandy podcast. I've talked about it on here several times, but they got her on their podcast to basically take parts of the book where, he gave his side of reasons why he broke up with Teresa, all of them critical things of her, all of them um, putting her in a bad light. And they would ask, her questions and then get her response to those things. Not going to go through it all because it's just definitely more of a good listen. It was so fascinating to hear her side. I absolutely think that she is telling the truth. I think that Gary feels almost media trained in a way, in the way he comes across when he talks and tries to be such a, just gentle guy that we really love. That's a terrible impression, but I feel like At least with Mel, we saw how boring he is. I think with Gary, we saw a guy who we like kind of loved when the show was on, but I think that that's not him. Um, but the weirdest freaking thing that we found out was that I guess it was when he invited her to his like home, or yeah, I mean his home, but like I guess he owns a lot of land and like outbuildings and has this property, and he was walking her through the property. And there, I just want to get this right because I want to quote it on what she said. And she, because they were trying to get a lot out of her, she was like hesitating at what she all really wanted to say, and how dirty she wanted to get her hands with stuff she could also say about him. But she did. This was pretty telling. But I guess while they were taking this walk on the property, he pointed to this shed and he goes, "See that shed?" And she was like, "Yeah." And so this is the quote. He pointed to a shed and said, "That's where he was going to hide my body after he killed me and chopped me up." Um, what? What, Gary? Uh, that's not a funny joke. And if you're trying to be funny, that is the darkest, creepiest humor I have ever heard. Um, I don't know. Like, I haven't heard that he has responded to that. This was all over social media after she was on the podcast. And it is the weirdest thing to say ever in the history. Even if you were like, oh, I'm going to kill you. If you say that, I'm going to kill you. Or, I mean, like when you joke about it that way, it's one thing. But when you actually say you're going to hide a body and chop it up, little bit too detailed there for my liking. And I just don't trust him. I think that's so weird and creepy and like off the charts morbid. That was just one of the things. I get like a couple of the things were how he claimed that he claimed that she wouldn't even let him sleep in her bed. She made him sleep on the couch. Her side of that was that because she still works, and that they had slept together like one night, like say he stayed over at her house and they slept together. And because she only has a queen bed or a double bed, and because I guess I can't remember if he snored or if he just like tossed and turned a lot, that she hardly got any sleep this particular night. So then the next day, like they were talking, and like the following morning she was supposed to have this really early morning meeting that she really wanted to get a lot of rest because she already didn't get any sleep that night. And so he kind of said to her, like, "So how did you sleep last night?" And she was like, "Well, honestly, I didn't really sleep that good because blah, 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 blah." And she just told him why she didn't sleep good. And he goes, "Oh, well, do you want me to, I can sleep on the couch tonight." Because she mentioned being a little worried because she had this meeting the next morning. And he said, "I can sleep on the couch tonight." And she just said, "Okay, that would be great if you don't mind." And gave him a pillow and blanket. So that's her side. His side was just that, like, she said, "Here, you can sleep on the couch." There was also another thing where, and I think we heard about this a while ago, about how when he picked her up at the airport and they were driving to his like house and she saw like a bunch of fields, she made a comment that, this would be a great place for like for some condos or like for development. And he made it seem like she just wanted to like get rid of all the farmland and put everything up in a, develop everything. And she was like, she explained how that's totally taken out of context and not at all how it was, and how like her side of it was that she couldn't tell that it was farmland. It just looked like open land to her that wasn't being used for anything. And so I think even based on her background and her career and stuff like that, she was like, "Oh, this would be a good developmental project to use." And he was like, "You want to destroy our farmlands?" She was like, "Oh, I didn't know that was farmland. I didn't realize." And so he made it seem like she wanted to like destroy all the farmland and wasn't supportive of, farmers and their again, I kind of believe her. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them. It's a really good podcast. I would encourage going and listening to it because it's like fascinating on kind of how, I don't know, it just makes you wonder. Again, not a good look for Golden anything. I guess the only thing we have going for us is Joan and Chalk. They seem to still be together. Who knows? I don't know, guys. I just think that Golden Bachelor might just not be a good idea because I think with the first season, we were like, oh, they're so cute. This is fun watching them like, make friends with each other in the house and like these old people falling in love. It's so cute. And maybe it was, but I think in the end, this is never really going to work because for one, the older you are, I just feel like the more set in your ways you get. And if these people they all say, that they love to share the rest of their lives with somebody and share this and share that. I don't know, but it seems to me though, like the longer you're single as you're getting older, the more just set in your ways you are. And the more you enjoy the things you do for yourself, how independent you've come. And maybe, I mean, maybe it's a cliche, but the old, like you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of phrase that the older you get, the less you want to change your life because you're set in it now. I think that's one problem. I think the other is if you have kids, and you are currently living around your kids and you have grandkids, it's going to be much, much harder for you to want to pick up and leave those grandkids and children to go to move in with somebody else. I just think that is a barrier as well. Not saying that can't ever work, but already Joan and Chalk still live apart. They haven't decided to I guess they have this apartment in New York. I don't ever see stories of them there or anything, but I think that, they're still living apart. So it honestly wouldn't surprise me if this doesn't last with them either. I just think you have so many things working against you for a proposal and marriage to actually come about with Goldens. I don't know. That's just my opinion, of course, as this whole podcast is, but I don't know if this Golden thing should continue. I don't think I want it to continue. This just really turned me off, and um, we shall see. All right. Well, guys, I was going to talk and touch a little bit on Taylor Frankie Paul here at the end of this episode, but I think I'm just going to end it here. And when I talk about Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, address this again, my thoughts on Taylor Frankie Paul. I will just touch on it here that they did on this, after the final rose, they had a little clip of Jesse interviewing her as they're filming. And it makes me a little worried about even this season of her because it reminded me that when it comes down to it, the show and the editors and the producers are actually in charge. No matter who it is that is their lead. And I just that one little 6-minute interview they had. It's also, I think, on the Bachelorette Instagram page. If you want to see it, I think it's in its entirety. That interview he has with her, while they're filming, it's after one of the rose ceremonies or something. And the questions he asks her and her responses. When I watched that interview, and then after watching this season 3 of Mormon Wives, I was like, oh, God, have they gotten to her already? I really had that thought. But I will explain that in a future episode of why I thought that. Because I don't think we need to get into a whole nother hour of that here. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And I don't know if I'm going to break down the whole season in the next episode or maybe take half of it, and then do the second half the next week. It's a little hard for me just going forward for the rest of the year. I'm not completely sure what I'm going to be doing for podcasts because, as we know, it is hard to get people to interview during this time of year just because everybody is so busy with the holidays, and we all feel that. So it's hard to book interviews now anymore until after the first of the year. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get that done. Um, I have a shit ton of shows I'm watching right now. Not only Mormon Wives, but also Selling Sunset dropped, Selling OC dropped. Um, Mayor of Kingstown is now showing the new episodes. Landman is now showing new episodes. I also saw, let me see if I can find it. It's a show that looks really, really good on Netflix that's called All Her Fault. It's a series on Peacock. Sorry, it's not Netflix. It's on Peacock, I believe. It looks really, really good. I'd love to watch that. So I have all kinds of shows I can talk about. But I just have to decide what and how much, to discuss on the podcast and how much y'all are interested. So if y'all have any opinions about what you'd like me to talk about, please just, drop me a DM. That's probably the easiest on my Instagram, and or in the show notes in the comments for the podcast. That would be great too. But yeah, as usual, I appreciate your support in any way you can show it. If you can please give me a 5-star review on this episode. If you can give me, a 5-star rating, if you can go review it, if you can go watch on YouTube, give me some comments there, subscribe on YouTube, like, follow, any of the things. I appreciate it all. One or all. Yeah, tell your friends, do all the things. So that's it for this week. Until next time, be calm, be strong, be kind, be grateful. Bye.